Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Good to see you. Thursday, the 4th of Cheshvan, October 22nd. Hope you're doing well. Great to have you back. Great to be back. Tomorrow we're off. So this is the show that will take you into Shabbat. Now we will have a rerun tomorrow. Don't worry. And if you haven't seen it, it'll be one from the vault, one of the greatest hits. Neil's putting that together. So that'll be fabulous. So don't worry, you'll have something to watch, but this is your wrap-up show of live shows for the week. We're coming to the very end of our tour of archaeology in Israel and Egypt. We've been watching this show together, The Exodus Decoded. It was a show that was put on by James Cameron with Simcha Jakovich, the Canadian/Israeli archaeologist. Not a lot of those, by the way. Not a lot of profound Canadian/Israeli archaeologists, but Simcha Jakovich, who used to have a show called The Naked Archaeologist on the History Channel, has been guiding us through some different theories about the Exodus and its historicity, archaeological and epigraphical evidence, geological evidence, and we're going to look at a little bit more today to finish it up. Today is the last day. We'll finish it up. There's about 15 minutes left in the documentary, and so we'll take a look at that at some point today. Now, I want to tell you, I get these videos from YouTube. They're free on YouTube. Anyone can watch it. I mean, sometimes I get them from other places on the internet, different Jewish sites. I've taken from Aish.com. I've taken from Chabad. But a lot of them are right there on YouTube. And this one's on YouTube too. But in order for us to be able to watch it, we have to sit through the commercials. And I never know what commercials are coming up. Most of the time it's like VRBO, Vacation Rentals by Owner or something. But the other day there was one that came up, a political ad. That I had no idea that was coming. It is not the intention of this show to endorse any candidate. However, I think you all know that we're leaning towards, in the upcoming election, on this show, we're leaning towards the Haimisha party, because when they go low, we go Haimisha. Plus, we have the campaign manager of South Florida for the Yoli 2020 campaign, Steve Simon, is a member of our congregation. So if on occasion we've showed a little bias towards the Yoli campaign, you might see that. But in terms of the political ads that pop up when we show something on YouTube, that's purely coincidental and certainly unintentional. It's just the only way we can watch those videos if we have to suffer through the commercials. So please don't read anything into that. Not that anybody did, which I appreciate. Sometimes people read into things that aren't there. There's nothing there. There's no there. Okay, now that we've made that clear, we can get back to our regular show. So I do want to just point out, we have a lot to get to today, but I just want to point out that a week from yesterday, in other words, next Wednesday, I'll be debuting my new show. It's a limited series. We're going to do it 3 times. And it's called The Greatest Story Ever Told, which is the name of a Grateful Dead song. And it's a song about Moses and Abraham that the Grateful Dead wrote. And so we'll look at the lyrics. Maybe we'll listen to a piece of the music and we'll talk about what are the allusions in the song and what can we learn about that. So if you want information on that, just go to tbm.org/Grateful Dead, GratefulDead, and purely coincidental, but superfan Larry Kerr is a big Grateful Dead fan. So that he will be tuning in, and I suspect his wife Abby will be there as well. So that's next Wednesday. Even if you don't love their music, you can still learn Torah. And I have some guest rabbis who are coming on that I think you're really going to love. Some great rabbis. The son of one of the rabbis is going to be with them on the second show. That's going to be really special because this kid, I think he's 10 or 11. This kid's amazing. He's an amazing musician in his own right. So check that out. Next Wednesday, we're debuting at 7 p.m. I suspect that a lot of people who watch this show at noon are not into the Grateful Dead music. I suspect that. But I also suspect that the people who watch this show at noon love learning Torah. And so from looking at these lyrics and trying to understand what they are getting at, we will be able to learn some authentic Torah, which is really the goal of the show. I'm not a musician. I'm not a music critic. I'm only using it as a jumping off point to get into some real Torah, but I happen to love the music, so I think it'll be fun. Plus, we'll listen to a little bit of it. And maybe even if you don't love the music or you've never heard it before, once you learn about the lyrics and hear some of the biblical references, then you might enjoy hearing the little pieces of music that we do play. So give it a shot. Check it out. I think you're going to find it interesting. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you like the music and you like Torah, then you're going to love this show. All right. So that's that. Now, we left off yesterday when we were looking at the Exodus Decoded video on the hunt for Mount Sinai. And I've hinted at a couple of midrashim that explain why, Mount Sinai, it's not part of who we are so much anymore. It's part of our history, but there's nothing really intrinsically holy about it. And, the 3rd century monastery that is there, that's a different religion, but Jews would never do that. We wouldn't set up a shul at Mount Sinai when no Jews live anywhere near there. If there was a city there, if that was part, but there wouldn't be. The goal was to get out of Sinai and not be there anymore and get to Israel. Now, other things are called Mount Sinai. And one of the things I pointed out, I was discussing this with a fan of the show, Mark Farber, yesterday, that a lot of hospitals, because Mark told me, hey, I found Mount Sinai. You've had all these archaeologists looking for Mount Sinai. Mark said, I found it. It's on Miami Beach. Mount Sinai Hospital. So that's funny. But you'll notice there are a lot of hospitals named Mount Sinai. Why are hospitals often or occasionally named Mount Sinai? I don't know if there are any hospitals in Israel named Mount Sinai. There might be, but I'm not aware of them, if there are. And the most famous ones are not. Ichilov, Sheba, Hadassah, Rambam. Those are the major hospitals in Israel. Shaare Tzedek. There are others, but I'm not aware of any that are named Mount Sinai. But there are a lot of hospitals in America named Mount Sinai. And the reason is because the tradition is that when the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, anyone who had any ailment was automatically healed. So if someone was blind, they could see. If they had a broken bone, it was fixed. Whatever your ailment was, Mount Sinai, when the Torah was given, was a place of healing. So what does that have to do with hospitals? Everything. That's the goal of hospitals, is to make people better from being sick. Right. Or to take care of people when they're, going through something. Like if you're having a baby there, you're not necessarily sick, but you need a healthy environment. Whatever, you get it. So the quest to find Mount Sinai, we're going to go get back with Simcha Jakovovich in a second, but before I do, I want to talk about what is Mount Sinai in the Tanakh post Mount Sinai. What's Mount Sinai post Mount Sinai? So that's a funny thing to say. What is Mount Sinai post Revelation? In other words, once the Torah is given and the Jewish people move on from Mount Sinai, is Mount Sinai mentioned again anywhere in the Tanakh? And if so, what's the context? And so there's one famous story. There's one famous story about Mount Sinai that comes later. And, a trivia question, I'd be impressed if anyone could figure this out. Who's the biblical character who goes to Mount Sinai? I'll give you a minute. If anyone can text me, then you're going to win a prize. Maybe like an autographed yarmulke. And by the way, the people from Millionaire, remember we had Millionaire? That was so long ago, I barely even remember it. But the people who won those autographed yarmulkes in Millionaire, they're starting to get them because they're in and they've been signed. They're ready to go out. Andrea, 4 Cups of Wine, Levine has them in her office, and I believe she's already sent them out. So you should be getting your autographed yarmulkes. Now, here's a question. You get this beautiful autographed yarmulke. Do you wear it? Or if you wear it, is that going to cause the value of the yarmulke? Because remember, these are autographed by me. That's going to cause the value of the yarmulke to go down. So should you maybe just frame it? It's like if you got a basketball autographed by Dwayne Wade, you probably wouldn't take it outside and play basketball with it. You'd probably like put it on a case or on a stand or something and display it in your home. And there's now this question with the yarmulke. If you wear it, but here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. It's not, if you have a basketball signed by Dwayne Wade and you want to get it signed by Dwayne Wade again, that's not so easy. He's hard to get it's hard to get in touch with him. But not me. If you have a signed autograph yarmulke by me and the signature's starting to fade, just bring it back and I'll fill it in. Now you have a worry there. The worry there is that someone else might see it. Like if you take it on the Antique Roadshow or something, and they're going to say, it looks like it faded and was filled in by someone else. And you're going to say, no, that it was actually faded in by him. And they go, how do we know that? It's harder to authenticate. So you may just want to get it, display it, frame it, whatever. It's up to you. It's up to you. Okay. No answers. Anyone know? 239-220-8890. Who is the other biblical character post Revelation that had a profound experience at Mount Sinai? And there's a very famous story. I'll give you a hint. It comes from the Book of Kings, the first Book of Kings. Does that help you at all? No answers yet. But that's not uncommon. I often ask for people to call or text, and other than maybe Diane and Ian and possibly Judy Cowan, no one ever writes in anything. So that's nothing new. Phone lines, by the way, wide open right now, 239-220-8890. We've come a long way on this show. We're going to get to Sinai in a second, but we've come a long way since we first started covering the Tulsi Gabbard campaign on the pilot show, only to find out on the second show that she was discontinuing her campaign. You know what I don't love? When people say they're suspending their campaign. Because to me, a suspension means like you might start it up again. Like you're suspended from school, but the suspension is going to be lifted and you can come back. You're suspended from the NFL for a game or two, but then the suspension's over and you're back. But to suspend a campaign, that's it. That's it. It's over. I mean, maybe you pick it up, maybe you run again in 4 years, but I don't like when they say we're suspending our campaign. I think they should say we're ending our campaign, or even discontinuing the campaign's over. It's expelled. It's not suspended. It's expelled. It's over. Anyway, it's a long time ago already. I mean, almost, 8 months. It's been 8 months since the dream of Tulsi Gabbard in the White House ended. And here we are tonight, in about 8 hours from now. Actually, I don't know if it's at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock tonight. Might even be at 7 o'clock. I don't know. We'll see if we can find out here. We're getting some information coming to us from the sit room, where Wolf is preparing for tonight's big debate. And you know he's going to have a lot to talk about with the crack staff. It looks to me like the debate is tonight at 9 o'clock, 9 to 11. So in about 8 hours and 45 minutes, we'll have arrived at the final presidential debate. So that's a long time. From Tulsi Gabbard dropping out to the final debate, we've been here live. Now, I will tell you an update in the programming schedule. This will be the last Thursday show, because I'm reclaiming my day off on Thursdays. So I've really been working 7 days a week since Corona started. And the weekends weren't that onerous in the summer, but now the weekends are full days for me again. Bar mitzvah season's back. Got a bar mitzvah this Shabbos morning. I'm doing a wedding Saturday night. Hebrew school. There's a lot going on the weekends now. So instead of working 7 days a week, I'm going to go back to 6 days a week, which means that Thursday, my day off, will continue to be my day off. And this then will be the last Thursday broadcast. We will show reruns. Don't worry, because chances are we've done so many shows now that you don't even remember them. Yeah, we'll be showing the best of. And Neil and I are working hard to figure out which ones were the best. So don't worry. But, it's kind of like, if you watch Seinfeld episodes, they're like a rerun that could come on and you're like, I don't really remember this one. Now, some of them, you've seen it 150 times and you can't even bear to take it anymore. But it's going to be a while before you've seen any of these episodes 150 times. So don't worry. We got you covered. We got you covered. Okay. Since nobody texted me the right answer, I'll just come out and say it. It's Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, in the 19th chapter of 1 Kings. And I want to show you that right now. That's a section of Talmud that I want to look at later. But here we go. On Sefaria, you're looking live. I mean, this happened a long time ago, but we're live right now. 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 1. Here's the story. Let me just set the scene for you. Elijah the prophet, we're talking 9th century, right? And every scholar dates Ahab and Jezebel. Now, Ahab was a king of the north. In other words, he was a king of the kingdom of Israel as opposed to Judah in the south in the mid-800s BCE. And he married Jezebel, a non-Jew, who was the daughter of the king of Tyre, which is in Lebanon today. And she was terrible. She did everything she could to pull him away from Torah, to lead him towards idol worship, to get the Jewish people to worship idols, and to persecute anyone who was living a life of Torah. So Ahab and Jezebel are villains in the Tanakh, and Elijah had trouble with them. Now, look what happens here that's the background now for what happens here, chapter 19 of First Kings. So I'm just going to read a little bit of it, and then we'll get to the point that we need. Remember, the reason we're looking at this chapter of Tanakh right now is because we're considering the idea of what is Mount Sinai post-Revelation. And so now we're anywhere from, depending on when you date Revelation, in the Exodus Decoded, they date Revelation back to 1500 BCE. So that would mean this is 650 years after Moses, what we're looking at now with Elijah. Some scholars date Revelation, or the experience of Moses and the Exodus 200 years later than that, to 1300, which would mean that we're now only about 450 years. But let's take for a moment the idea that Revelation is approximately 1500 BCE. Then this would be a good, about 650 years after Moses. And about 100, this we could say for sure, about 150 years after King David. Okay, so we're about 150 years after King David. The kingdom has now been split. Judah is the southern kingdom, and Israel is the northern kingdom, and Elijah's having real trouble as the prophet of the day, dealing with Ahab and Jezebel, who are the king and queen of the northern kingdom. All right, so what we want to see here, just a little foreshadowing, we're going to see something that involves Mount Sinai. And it's really the only other really interesting story about Mount Sinai since the Jews left Mount Sinai. So let's see what we can learn about it. When Ahab told Jezebel, this is chapter 19 of 1 Kings, verse 1, of course, our friend Sepharia. When Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had put all the prophets to the sword, Jezebel, so by the way, just in the previous chapter, Elijah challenges all the prophets of the god of Baal, and he embarrasses them. And it shows that God's with him and not these other prophets of false gods. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "Thus and more may the gods do, if by this time tomorrow I have not made you like one of them." Frightened, he fled all at once for his life. He came to Beersheba, which is in Judah, and left his servants there. He himself went a day's journey. Okay, so now, just to point out, Elijah's afraid that Jezebel's coming to kill him. And so he's scared. And so he flees. And he comes to Beersheba, which is in the south. So it says here, Beersheba, which is the Negev today, which is in Judah. So where's Jezebel and Ahab? They're in the north, the northern part of Israel. So Elijah flees southward into a different country, the southern kingdom called Judah, and left his servants there. But that wasn't far enough away. So look where he goes now. He himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush and sat down under it and prayed that he might die. In other words, he said, why should I even live? What sense is this? The Jews aren't really listening to me. Ahab is a terrible king. They're trying to kill me just for standing up for you. And it's enough already. Now, O Lord, take my life, for I'm no better than my fathers. He's ready to die. He lay down and fell asleep under a broom bush. Now, remember, he's going out into the wilderness a day's journey away. And, all right, we'll come back to this in a second. Suddenly, an angel touched him and said, "Arise and eat." He looked about, and there beside his head was a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. By the way, a cake, I don't know what kind of cake this was. It says ugat in Hebrew, but a cake baked on hot stones sounds pretty good. I would be interested in that too. The angel of the Lord came a second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat." Always food. or the journey will be too much for you. He rose and ate and drank, and with the strength from the meal, now look at this. He walked 40 days and 40 nights as far as the mountain of God at Horeb. Horeb is Mount Sinai. We've seen it in the Torah. It's a nickname of Mount Sinai. By the way, ironic that it happened to take him 40 days and 40 nights, the same amount of time it took Moses to get the Torah from God. That's how long it took Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, to get to Mount Sinai. Now, the question is God wanted him to journey, but is he going the right way? The next verse is fascinating. Then he went into a cave, and there he spent the night. Then the word of the Lord came to him. He said to him, God said to Elijah, look at this. What are you doing here? Why are you here? Of all places, why did you come to Mount Sinai? What are you doing here? So he replied, I'm moved by zeal for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant. They've torn down your altars. They've put your prophets to the sword. I'm the only Jew left that's following what you want me to do, following the Torah. What's God's response? Come out, he called, and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And lo, the Lord passed by. Now, this is a very famous section of Tanakh. This is a very famous story. So here he is on Mount Sinai, talking to God. Now, we have one other story of that happening. That's Moses talking to God at Mount Sinai. And what happened when Moses said to God, let me see your face? God took Moses and he put him in the cleft of the rock. And he said, you can't see my face and live, but I'm going to turn you away from me and I'm going to pass behind you. And then when I pass behind you, you can look and you'll see my back. So Moses was in the cleft of this rock. God passes by. Moses then turns around and he sees God's back. So now here's Elijah in the same cleft of the rock that Moses was. Now we know Moses was supposed to be there. God told him to come up the mountain to get the Torah. But when Elijah gets there, God says, what are you doing here? And after that, this famous story happens. So look what happens. Come out, he called, and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And lo, the Lord passed by. Sound familiar? Same thing happened to Moses. There was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks by the power of the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. Sound familiar? You probably heard this story before. After the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire, a soft murmuring sound. Or sometimes it's translated as a still small voice. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his mantle about his face and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then a voice addressed him and said again, what are you doing here? Elijah, what are you doing here? Why are you here? He answered, same answer, right? I'm moved. I'm the only Jew left. The Lord said to him, here's the answer. Go back by the way you came and on to the wilderness of Damascus, meaning go north, right, etc. And so the story is going to go on. And he said, go back to the people. There's nothing here anymore. You came here to talk to me, fine. But the Jews aren't here. Your job is to go back to where the Jews are and try and convince them to follow Torah. There's nothing doing here. In fact, I showed you all these miracles, these different powers and stuff, the earthquakes and all that stuff, and all the things that happened at Mount Sinai. That's nothing, right? It said, and the Lord wasn't there. Where was the Lord? In the faint voice that Elijah heard that told him, go back to where the Jews are. That's all we know about Mount Sinai in the rest of the Tanakh. What we know about Mount Sinai and the rest of the Tanakh is someone as great as Elijah the prophet goes there and God says, you shouldn't be here. What are you doing here? Why'd you come here? Amazing idea. It's supported in the Talmud in a couple of different places. I want to show you one right now. This is the Tractate of Ta'anit, page 21b, where an idea is put forth, which says the following. Upon hearing this impressive argument, Rabbi Nachman bar Rav Chisda said to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, "Let the master arise and come to live with us and as our community leader." Rav Nachman said to him, "We already learned that Rabbi Yossi says." All right, now so that's who said what to who, but here's the point. It is not the place of a person that honors him. It is not the place of a person that honors him. In other words, you're not honored by where you're standing. Elijah, you came back to Mount Sinai, but we could have this conversation anywhere. Rather, the person honor his place. And now here's what it says: as we found with regard to Mount Sinai, that as long as God was there, the Torah said, "Don't let the flocks or the herds feed before the mount." So in other words, when God was above Mount Sinai, giving Moses the Torah, there were all these special rules. Nobody's allowed near the base of the mountain. Men and women can't be together. Keep the animals away. While God was there. But then God's presence left. And look what it says. Once the divine presence departed from the mountain, the Torah said, "When the shofar sounds long, they shall come up to the mount." This indicates that the sanctity was not inherent to the place, but was due to the divine presence resting there. Meaning that as soon as God's presence left Mount Sinai is no different than any other mountain. Now, Israel's different. Israel is the permanent Holy Land. But Mount Sinai is a place outside of the Holy Land, which for a moment in time was holy, but for all the time afterwards, it no longer is. So all of that was an introduction on what Sinai is today in Jewish theology. And now that we have that, let us go and see where our friend Simcha Jakovovich is, and let's see if he can actually find today Mount Sinai. So hang on one second.
Here, archaeologists found the remnants of Midianite flocks and even Midianite wall drawings. If Moses was tending Midianite flocks in the Sinai, this is the only place he could have camped. And based on local flock raising practices, Mount Sinai should be no more than 45 kilometers from Timnah. This gives us our second coordinate. The final biblical coordinate in the search for Mount Sinai appears in Deuteronomy 1:2. It states that the mountain of God is an 11-day journey from a place called Kadesh Barnea. Today, almost all archaeologists identify the biblical Kadesh Barnea with the oasis of Tel El Kudirat in north-central Sinai. Using 15 kilometers a day as our measure, we can now draw our last arc into the desert, 165 kilometers from Kadesh Barnea, leaving us with a very tiny area that conforms to all the biblical coordinates.
So the fun thing with the serpent is, how does a serpent talk? And not only that, but why is the serpent's punishment?
Nonetheless, even in this small area, there are many mountains. But there is a clue that may help us zero in on the precise peak. The book of Exodus calls Mount Sinai a holy mountain. And holy mountains in the desert are marked by ancient open-air rock sanctuaries.
Yeah, what are those? They look like little excavations. That's amazing.
In this area, there is only one mountain surrounded by sanctuaries. Today, that mountain is called Jebel Hashem El Tarif.
Very distinct, that second piece, okay? Right there.
Although this entire area is in the middle of a military zone, we got to it. This mountain perfectly fits all the criteria for Mount Sinai. It is surrounded by a huge plateau that could have accommodated hundreds of thousands of Israelites. It is easily accessible. It literally sits on the main Trans-Sinai Highway, which follows the topography of the ancient route.
The mountain is not very high. It's only about 200 meters above the plateau, but it is very conspicuous. You can see it from distance. And the unique point is that it is surrounded by actually the largest concentration of open area sanctuaries that we know today in the desert.
If we are right, some 3,500 years ago, Moses climbed this mountain and received the 10 Commandments on its summit. But this is as far as we're permitted to go. Our professional camera crew sticks out like a sore thumb in a military zone. The Egyptian army forbids us to proceed. We cannot climb the mountain to confirm our theory that this is Sinai. But we came back without a crew and armed with only a small camera. We had to climb to the top in search of evidence that this was the mountain where Moses received the commandments from God. But what would we need to find to prove that this is Sinai? The Bible states that Mount Sinai has several unique characteristics. If this is the mountain, it should have a large cleft in it, a natural podium where Moses stood and called out to his people. Like all holy mountains, it would have grave sites of holy men on its summit, and there should be evidence of a freshwater spring on top of the mountain, an extremely rare characteristic that, according to the Bible, sets Sinai apart from other mountains in this desert. When we reach the top, we find everything as it should be. The cleft, looking out to a natural amphitheater. From here, Moses' voice would have carried for miles. And here are the grave sites.
Each one is a circle, about 6 meters in diameter, and they are built in the shape of a platform, each one. You can see the burial cell. In the burial cell, nicely built and roofed.
And rarest of all,
Look at this. You see the white stuff?
it appears there was an ancient spring at the top of the mountain.
This is a Traventine, which means an accumulation of calcium under wet conditions that indicate an ancient spring. Finding it on the mountain top is quite unusual. The remains of a real ancient spring. Yeah. This is quite unique here.
All the evidence points to this mountain as Mount Sinai, where according to the Bible, the words now etched in the human imagination were first heard. I am God, your God, who brought you out of Egypt from the place of slavery. Thou shalt not have any other God before me. Thou shalt not represent such gods by any carved statue or picture. Do not take the name of God, your Lord, in vain. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Honor your mother and father. Do not commit murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not testify as a false witness against your neighbor. Do not be envious of your neighbor's house, and do not covet your neighbor's wife. According to the Bible, Moses wrote the 10 Commandments on stone tablets and placed them in a golden box, the Ark of the Covenant. He then built a portable temple at the base of the mountain, a tabernacle. It's a place to worship the God of Israel and is a home for the Holy Ark. The following model of the Holy Tabernacle has been created to the exact specifications provided in the book of Exodus. At the time of the Exodus, as you neared the entrance, you would have come to a screen 7 meters high. According to ancient Jewish sources, the screen was decorated by winged lions or griffins, figures usually associated with ancient Greece. Only priests were allowed inside the courtyard. And here, there was a 4.5 meter high altar for sacrificial animals. In a daily ritual, priests carried animals up the ramp. Then, the blood of the sacrifices anointed the horns of the altar. In the back of the courtyard was the tabernacle, the house of God. Only Moses, his brother Aaron, and Aaron's sons entered it. Here, beyond another tapestry embroidered with griffins, were golden ritual objects. And in the back was the Holy of Holies. In it, there was only one object, the ultimate object, the Ark of the Covenant. No one knows exactly what the Ark of the Covenant looked like. The Bible claims that it was designed by God Himself to house the 10 Commandments. Based on descriptions in the book of Exodus, people have attempted to reconstruct it, complete with gold carrying poles and a golden cover crowned by birds. Whichever way it looked, what is clear is that it was an exquisite work of gold. The Bible says that a tribe called Dan helped to craft the golden ark. Is it a coincidence that Homer calls the people buried at Mycenae Danoi? Perhaps among the golden objects found by Schliemann at Mycenae, there is an image of the ark made by the same Danites that crafted the box that once held the 10 Commandments. Incredibly, among all the golden objects, there is a piece of priestly jewelry that goes unnoticed and unheralded. So far, experts have assumed that this is a depiction of a single object, but we believe that it's a 3,500-year-old image of 3 legendary objects viewed head-on. Here, we can clearly see the holy altar, the ramp of the tabernacle, and the Ark of the Covenant. At last, we know what the Ark of the Covenant looked like. More than that, we now know how the holy objects appeared when seen from the Holy of Holies, looking out. Until now, the only person who would have seen these objects from this perspective is Moses.
In the beginning of this journey, we asked the question, is the biblical Exodus fact or fiction? I think a compelling case has been made that the Exodus is a historic fact. Here we were shown for the first time ancient hieroglyphics and stone carvings depicting the parting of the sea. We saw the biblical plagues deciphered and the archaeological and geological proof that they actually occurred. We even trekked to the real Mount Sinai. And then Yakubovich revealed what is arguably the discovery of the millennium, a gold image of the Ark of the Covenant.
But I think we must end our journey, as we started, with a question. Did all this happen as a result of massive geological events triggered by nothing more than nature? Or were the earthquakes, the volcanoes, and the tsunamis caused by divine intervention when God decided to free a nation from slavery and forge a new covenant with humanity?
Okay, so that was fun. We pretty much got through the whole documentary together. I skipped the part with the 10 commandments because the 10 plagues, because I find it to be kind of silly. But if you want to go back, this is on YouTube. Just go to Exodus Decoded. You can watch the whole thing again. And the truth is, if you don't believe everything that you see here, and you really want to know more about the Ark of the Covenant and what really happened, then you have to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark again, because there they have, what really happened, and you can really learn about there. So go back, watch Indiana Jones again, then maybe watch part 3. You can skip part 2. The Temple of Doom you don't need. You really don't need part 3 either. Part 3 is more Christological, dealing with the Grail of Jesus, the Holy Grail. Part 4 I couldn't even get through. It was so stupid. But I love part 3. But part 1 is the one that's really about the Ark. So go back and watch that, and you're gonna get the whole story. Now, I've talked to a bunch of you over the course of the week. Some people are watching this and saying, look, it's really interesting, and I like to learn about it, but it doesn't change the way I think about this or about that. It's not meant to. All we're doing is talking about what science is out there, what scholars have been able to figure out, and you saw they talked to some of the best scholars in the business. But if you really want to learn more about it, that one of the scholars that was, I think his name is Bill Deaver, the professor, I believe he's a professor at University of Arizona, but he wrote a book called what did the Bible writers know and when did they know it? Something like that. Dever, D-E-V-E-R. And he was in the beginning of this show. He said, it doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like the Exodus necessarily happened. We can't change history. It couldn't have happened in the 1300s. You can't go back to the 1500s. But he wrote a book you could learn a lot from, and really get a full sense of what archaeologists have learned about the Torah and especially about the Exodus. So you might want to. I read it so long ago. I have it somewhere in my office. I don't remember. I think I read it in rabbinic school, but that's one that you might want to check out. I would not read anything necessary. I mean, I'm not really into the minimalists, the one who don't believe in anything. And sometimes they say, I don't believe this, and then they find something and disproves what they've written. But Bill Dever's fair. You might enjoy what he has to say. Anyway, that is our tour. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be off tomorrow, but we will have a rerun. I'll be back live next Monday, and of course, next Wednesday is the premiere of The Greatest Story Ever Told, the authentic Torah insights inspired by the music of the Grateful Dead. That will be next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Looking forward to another Shabbat Friday night where we will be the clergy broadcasting live from the sanctuary here at Temple Beth Am. And then Saturday morning, I'll be back with you for Torah study at 9 a.m. Again, that's Saturday morning. I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks so much for joining me. This is a really great. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about Mount Sinai in the post-Revelation world in the Tanakh, and then enjoying that documentary with me. Maybe we'll find some more archaeological documentaries that we could annotate and watch together. It's really cool stuff. Have a great day, everybody. I will see you this Shabbat. Bye-bye.